So we spend a lot of time, or at least recently, we spend a lot of time talking about self-care. And that's because most people that are drawn to the spiritual path in a serious way are givers. They just give and give and give. And what happens very often in that giving is people get burnt out. So that's why it's so important to practice healthy self-care and make sure that we are taking care of ourselves in order for us to then continue to thrive. If we enter into a situation where we're just giving until we drop, and then we have to be, just completely down and retreat and not speak to anybody, not do anything, and then we go back in, and then we fight, and we give and give and give, and then we drop. It's not sustainable because we're having these really high peaks and then these really low valleys in our energy levels, and that is not very efficient. And probably one of the most powerful teachings that I discovered on this path of Trikaya Buddhism is energy efficiency. We want to be very efficient with how we run our lives, how we hold ourselves, because then it allows this progression of mind states to happen. We might start off at a certain level, and maybe we're doing this bouncing up and down thing. We feel really great, we're very, very high, and then we're really, really low, and then we're really high, and then we're really low. And that corresponds many times to our internal energy level. So as we're giving and giving and giving, we get really high, but then we're burnt out, and then so we fall really, really low. And if we're paying attention really closely, what's happening is we give and give and give to excess, and then our mind state drops because we have overgiven. We've given more than we have to give. And now we're in a really crappy mind state, still trying to give, and then there's backlash because we're not treating others with the utmost love and respect and compassion. And then we pull back. And so to avoid this bouncing, this up and down cycle, we need to be very cognizant of where our energy levels are, what do we need at this point, what is our heart song, what is going to fulfill our needs at this moment, at this time, and they change. So this isn't something that we get dialed in once and then we let go of and we forget. But if we take the time to do this, then instead of our mind state having these wild swings, we start to stabilize. We start to notice that, yes, today I'm up. Yesterday I was down a little bit. And there'll be these fluctuations. But if you were to kind of map it out on a curve, or on a graph rather, you would see this curve, that overall trend is trending upward. And that happens when we do that self-care, when we take time to do our private personal meditation every morning, every evening, and then we're maintaining our mind all day long, practicing mindfulness, watching where our mind is taking us, reeling it in, focusing on what's actually important and not what we just think is important, but what is actually important to us. And then taking time to contemplate when we're getting stuck, when we are having those valleys, saying, well, what is that really about? What keeps tripping me up? Why do I keep falling on my face and feeling like this? So that is all our personal practice that we do, but that's not the complete picture, because we live in a relational world. We live in and amongst others. If you were, let's have a little pause for the trash bin. So if you were to go live in a cave somewhere, then perhaps that's all you need to do is your personal practice. But even then, I don't think that's accurate. It's not enough. Just focusing on our own self is never enough. Because ultimately, this practice, if you want to really be free and not just have, a decent life, ultimately, the practice is not about us. It's not about me. It's not about you. It's about something much, much bigger. And that's where community comes in. So even the hermit living in the cave has some kind of community. They might just be communing with the animals and the herbs and the mushrooms that they're collecting to live on. But there's still a sense of community. They're still communing. For us, we live and work in the world. This is our path. We're not here to escape. We're here to live in the world. And the longer that we're here, the more we realize the instability of this world. It's constantly changing. Everything is in motion. Nothing stays the same. But what community gives us is support. It gives us something that can hold us up on those days when we have our little dip. And then when we're on the upswing, that allows us to give to community and lift up others who might be in the dip. So this circles back to why our private, personal self-care is so important when you're part of community. Because if you're not doing your self-care, look what happens is you go way down, and now the whole rest of the community has to put in a lot of energy to help support you. But if you're only dipping down a little bit, then it's easier for the community to step in and hold you up. Now I want you to be very careful, because I don't want you to think that, if I have a really horrendous, crappy day, then I need to completely disconnect from my community so I don't drag them down. It's like, no, that's just going to pull you down further. And that's going to pull the whole community down further, because we are all connected. This entire planet is connected. And we're at a very, very interesting time in our development as a world, as this earth, where there's a decision that's being made. And it's not an overnight decision. It's one that's being made over centuries of, will this be a hell world where there's just violence and struggle and hate? Or will we build an enlightened society and get to experience a heaven world? And this is the choice that's before us. And as more and more people incarnate here who have had very high past lives, as more and more people awaken and come into these very high states, it's becoming easier to see that this is a choice. this is an actual choice that we can make. It's a tricky choice because it's not something, an enlightened society is not something you can force on somebody. That's the antithesis to an enlightened society, right? It's trying to force things on people. But there is a definite flow happening that you, as an individual, get to choose if you're going to be in the flow of people that are moving towards enlightened society or not, or into, more struggle and suffering. So you can think of it as like this flow of water that's happening, and there's all these individual little droplets, and there's a split off point. There's a point that we hit where one way it's going towards the rocky rapids and struggle and turmoil, and some of the water droplets will just be pulled that way. And then there's another way splitting off into this nice gentle stream, very peaceful. And depending on where you are in this river, in this flow, if you're kind of in the middle and your mind states are kind of bouncing towards turbulence and strife and struggle, and then towards peace and gentleness and compassion, then you are headed for this split. And then you will have to decide, you'll either get swept one way or the other. But if you rely on community, it brings you further over, well, depending on which type of community, right? Because there are communities built on struggle and strife and very dark mind states. That is a type of community, because all of us want to belong somewhere. All of us want to feel that connection. We all want to commune. And incidentally, one is not better than the other. A world of strife and struggle and rockiness is not inherently better than one that is of peace and compassion. They just feel different. Very, very different. So that's for you to figure out, which world do I want to live in? So the more you get involved in community, the more centrally located you'll be in that split that happens. So you'll be more on one side or the other. It's when you're flipping in between the two that I think is very, very difficult. So one of the ways that we kind of move, if you will, as this river is coming up to the split point, if you want to get into the middle of the river that's heading towards compassion and calm and peace, then you get more and more involved in that community. If you want to struggle and strife and fight, then you get involved in Fight Club, right? But don't talk about Fight Club. I don't know if you guys get that movie reference, very old movie. So something I want to encourage you really to consider deeply as part of your self-care is asking yourself on a daily or weekly basis, how am I caring for my community? Because the more I care for my community, the more I am connected to that support that that community lends to me. and then I can lend support to it when I'm having a good day. It's a two-way street. Now, that doesn't mean that we throw away all of our other self-care that we learn. We don't start giving and giving and giving to the point that we drop, because again, that doesn't help the community. But by taking what is extra, our extra money, our extra time, our extra energy, and instead of just letting it sit there, time, money, those are both forms of energy. If we just try to let energy sit there, it doesn't sit. Energy is power. So power is constantly in motion. It needs to move. It's like this river that's flowing. So you're going to flow, whether you want to or not. But because you are practicing, there's a certain level of consciousness and choice, awareness that comes, that we get to choose the direction of that flow of energy. So we can decide, all right, I've got this extra energy today. This stuff is moving through me. All my basic needs are met. I've been fed. I've got my bills are paid. I've got my shelter. I've got my clothing. I've had my social interaction. My emotional needs are met. And I have this extra energy. So what do I do with it? Should I get on Facebook and argue with somebody? That's a very popular option. But that's bringing us into the community of struggle and strife. Or, what can I do for my spiritual community? How can I give back to that? How can I form a deeper connection with a community that's going to be firmly in the river that is flowing towards compassion and peace and joy? And how do I put my attention into that and use all this extra energy that I have and focus and put something tangible into that? And we do that through projects. So we're physical beings. We need tangible things to focus on. That's why the social medias are so popular, because we're putting words and pictures, and then we're getting this instant feedback loop. So then that kicks off our dopamine, and then it makes us feel that sense of belonging. So social media is a very easy to access project, if you will. Think about it that way. Getting involved in your spiritual community, it takes a little bit more work. It takes a little bit more effort, because there's commitment and responsibility involved. And any of these social media things, or any hobby that you come up with, you can just ghost people. You can just be like, no, I'm not going to do that. But those forums don't really offer the same level of support. If you disappear from Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, whatever is popular right now, people probably won't notice. They might be like, oh, I like that person's posts, but they're not here, so here, let me just scroll by and find somebody else. When you're part of a spiritual community, your absence and your presence are both noticed profoundly, because, as I said, it's forming that support for not just you, but for everyone else in that community. So if you're interested in this community, I highly encourage you to get involved, come to our community meetings, ask for projects, ask for a task to work on, and use that task to yoke your consciousness to this line of enlightenment that we are sharing in the world. And that line of enlightenment then becomes a support for you in every aspect of your life. It's very cool how it works. It's definitely helped me. You know, I think probably most people know my story, so I won't go into it, but I can definitely say that this place has saved my life multiple times. It's given me a reason to be here. It's given me energy to do things that this body should not have been able to do. So it works. It's very, very powerful. It can get intense because as we practice, as we start to work in that very tight relational aspect of our practice, our sensitivities are very attuned. And that means that our personal practice has to evolve and become stronger and stronger the more we're involved with our community. Because we feel each other intensely. And as we become more empowered, then every action that flows through us has not only our personal energy, it has that extra kick from enlightenment. So if we start to get judgmental about somebody, if we say, oh, this person should be doing that, then that judgment is going to be carried over to that other person and hit them much harder. If you're working on a project with somebody and maybe they're not doing it the way that you think it should be done, and it triggers some anger and some frustration, then that anger and frustration is now empowered and it can hit that other person. So if we're honest and if we keep the lines of communication open, then this side effect becomes this blessing of a rock polisher, where we get this almost instant feedback of, oh, I just let my energy out in a very inappropriate way. Let me correct myself. If necessary, actually issue an apology to the person that was affected. And then work on myself so I don't do it again. Because that was a colossal waste of energy. So let me contemplate if I need to and figure out what is it that caused me to actually play out that pattern, which in turn allows us to grow and be able to hold even more light, which allows us to rise into higher states of attention on our own, and then it has this wonderful blessing of raising the whole community up to a higher state, which then provides room for support of even more people to come in who maybe don't know how all of this works, and then they'll go through their own corrections, and we wind up just supporting each other in higher and higher ways. And this is how we build enlightened society. It's not that we're going to go out and conquer the world and make everybody behave. It's that we decide as a group to all get together and flow in a certain direction. And if other people want to go be weird and do destructive things, then they can go do that, but we're all going to flow this way. And then that split in the river happens. And we don't have to go into the turmoil Instead, we're focused on where we are headed. And in doing so, we let go of even more of that judgment, more of that heaviness. And we get to experience these very high states, even in what appears to be a very unstable world, because we have that community support. Our little part of this earth can be very, very beautiful if we're all working together. And our practice doesn't stop when we go to sleep at night. I'll talk more about this on another day. But it also continues into the dream plane. So before you go to bed, read a high spiritual book, read something happy. And I and other teachers, occasionally, I don't spend a whole lot of time in the astral and the dream planes, but once in a while, I dip in there. And one of the things I was playing with last night is I contacted some friends and I was like, hey, let's leave some rainbows in the dark spots in the dream plane. So if you ever catch yourself in a dream, in a really dark, heavy, scary, or troubling dream, look for a rainbow. If you can bring your consciousness with you into your dream, look for a rainbow. And if you just touch that rainbow, it will instantly bring you to a very happy, high, beautiful astral plane. And that's true even in this physical world. Just look for the rainbow and connect your consciousness with it, and it will bring you to a very high state. So these are the little Easter eggs, the little games that we play in this world for those who want to feel that community of brightness, who want a different choice than what's being pumped out by much of the mainstream media and what a lot of people get caught up in on social media. And I want to say I'm not anti-social media. I'm on Facebook a lot. I'm on Instagram. And what I focus on doing is just sprinkling a little bit of light in there, a little bit of joy, little Easter eggs, if you will, or little opportunities for people to connect with this community. Opportunities to join this movement. And ours, in our little, Dharma Center, Trikaya Buddhism, is only one of many of these very bright, high communities. So if you're not drawn to this particular path, then look for the path that you are drawn to, that you can commit to, that you can take this self that you have worked so hard to develop, that you have spent lifetimes forming, and find that community, that pathway that you can completely give that self to. That you can completely love and trust, and enter into this communion. So that's my invitation for you today, is to enter into communion with community as part of your self-care. And again, I will say it one last time, it's not about martyrdom. It's not about working yourself for the community until you're completely exhausted, because that doesn't work. That doesn't help anyone. So take the time to fulfill your needs, and then take that honest look. What is actually extra? What do I have left over in terms of energy, in terms of power, and where am I directing it? Because every single day there's something left over. There's something. And make that part of your practice, to be conscious of, okay, what am I doing with this energy? Because I can't hoard it. I can't hold on to it. It's going to flow through me in one way or the other. And so which way do I want it to flow? And make that a conscious choice. So let's meditate some. If you're watching this on the YouTube live recording, then it will be silent because I'm not allowed to distribute music through YouTube. But if you're on Zoom, you should be able to hear the music. If you're here in person, you can hear it. We'll do 3 songs. We'll start on the navel center and allow your attention to rest just below your belly button. And allow yourself to feel that power well up within you. To replenish your being, to feel the support of the earth. And then when the second song comes on, move your attention up again to your heart chakra. To start to feel that spaciousness, that openness. And just allow your heart to fill with light. And then when the third song comes on, focus on the third eye. And allow your attention to rest in this very high visionary place. We're not trying to make anything happen. We're not trying to project anything. We're just allowing the energy to rise and build and rest. And to see what happens, to observe what actually is in this moment. If anything starts to pull at your attention, if you get distracted, you start to think, you start to feel sensations and then think about them, very gently pull your attention back to the chakra you're working on. And let your attention rest there. And then you'll get distracted again. So very gently pull your attention back. And just keep coming back. And relaxing into this present moment. So meditation is a gift. It's this beautiful gift that we give to ourselves that brings us into very high mind states. And it's a gift that we give to each other. Because just think about it, it's so much more pleasant to deal with people who are happy and in a bright, progressive mind state, isn't it? Than opposed to somebody who's very heavy and struggling and full of anger and fight. So this meditation that we do every day, it starts out for us. It starts out for our own self-care, where we consciously are pulling ourselves into very high and bright states, where we're letting go of all that heaviness and tapping into our innate joy. But very quickly, it becomes not about us. It becomes this wonderful opportunity to give to others, where that light fills us up, and then we're full, and then now we can just pour out of us. That's why when you see the pictures of saints and Buddhas, they have this light around them. They're not holding it in and just keeping it for themselves and being like, yes, I want to be really, really going to keep all this light because it feels good. It's like, no. It just naturally bursts out the crown. It comes out of the heart. It just spills into this world. And it's easy to make that a very abstract thing, that we say, okay, I'm going to dedicate my meditation to the world. And it's like, don't do that. Instead, dedicate your meditation to each other, to community, to actual people. Say, this is for the person who's going to check out at the grocery store, who's running the cash register. This is for all of my coworkers. This is for all of my neighbors. This is for everyone I might run into today. Anyone who may think of me in any way. This meditation is for you. And in this way, we give back to community, to the community, this long, long line of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas that have made the path available to us. We then pay it forward and make this light available to everyone else. So I think that's a very powerful way to live, is to recognize that everything that we do is not just for us, it's for everyone.